Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for the next episode of our Ask the Expert Fabric Edition series. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, and hi, we see you in there now, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our experts to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, let's start the show.
Welcome, everyone. To today's session on Better Together Analytics Engineering with DBT and Microsoft Fabric. This session is in partnership with DBT Labs. And welcome, everyone, to the session. Hope this is insightful about analytics engineering. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's introduce our speakers today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nina Anderson. I'm Manager of Partner Solutions Architect at DBT Labs. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Nina, for being here. And I'm Abhishek. I work as Principal Product Manager at Microsoft. And I'm more than happy to cover all the latest and the greatest that we have in offering for DBT on Microsoft Fabric. And I've joined with my colleague Abhinay as well, who will be monitoring the chats. With this, let's get started, Nina.
Sounds great. Let's get into it. Before we dive into DBT in Fabric, I want to quickly explain why DBT matters. DBT has become a standard way that teams transform data using SQL. It's not niche anymore. There's a big global community, and teams across industries rely on it every day to build production-ready data products. I think what people love about DBT is its simplicity. That's certainly what I found back in, I think, 2019 when I encountered DBT open source version for the first time when I was working in-house in a data role. DBT allowed me to break complex transformations into small, modular SQL models that are version controlled, easy to review, and also easy to evolve as your data grows in complexity and volume. DBT also brings strong data quality practices. Things like tests for freshness, uniqueness, relationships, so teams can trust their pipelines, not just build them. And finally, DBT emphasizes documentation and governance. Models, columns, dependencies are clearly defined, which makes collaboration much easier as teams scale. That's why DBT sits at the center of the modern data lifecycle, from raw data all the way to BI, AI, and operational analytics. Let's also take a moment to think about the context we're operating in. Analytics engineering is a term and a role that has come to mean a collection of responsibilities around taking data from a raw format and delivering it into a usable, trusted, verified state downstream. Both DBT Labs and Fabric are designed to support analytics engineering across the data lifecycle. Starting with ingestion, data manipulation, testing, deployment, and consumption, as we saw on the previous slide. The way that we work as data teams is changing, though. Evidence shows that agents constitute a larger and larger share of consumption queries on data globally. So we need to make sure that data platforms and data are structured to make that work well as for the humans operating on those platforms every day. That means the role of an analytics engineer is evolving too. It requires the ability to design these agentic systems well. That all means that If quality and trust were important before, they're 10 times more important now. What makes good foundations for analytics also turns out to make good foundations for AI. In particular, giving agents the right context on data, semantics, quality, and trust is critical to deliver on AI initiatives. With that context set, let's talk a little bit about why you would use the DBT platform with Fabric. DBT platform is catered to support teams throughout that entire data development lifecycle. That's the diagram that you see on the bottom right-hand side here. We start developing, we need to test, deploy, operate, and so on in this infinite loop. And so DBT platform helps build on top of Fabric through these different features or capabilities. In particular, that modular, testable, governed development. It helps with shared context across different roles, whether you're a data engineer, an analyst, or even a data consumer. And it helps folks from those different roles participate safely in providing the business context needed to build useful and verified data pipelines. Lastly, it's also really helpful for iteration that happens every day, as we know, without fear of breaking things and making unexpected changes. So DBT platform is a very helpful CI/CD layer on top of Fabric. We're going to play a demo now, which should bring to life those ideas. What does it mean to develop with DBT platform? And how does that help specifically when you're developing on Fabric in the data development lifecycle? And get this going. Sorry, folks.
Hey everyone, this is Nina from DBT Labs. Today I'm going to be walking us through a quick demo of DBT platform working with Microsoft Fabric. Organizations adopting Microsoft Fabric like it because they can centralize their data quickly for a variety of use cases, but they still face a common challenge. How do you turn that operational data into trusted, reusable business data models? That's where DBT platform comes in. DBT helps teams transform raw data into analytics and AI-ready datasets using modular SQL, automated testing, documentation, and collaborative development workflows. In this demo, I'll show how DBT platform can sit on top of Microsoft Fabric to help teams build trusted analytics, and I'll use the worldwide importers sample dataset to illustrate. So let's start by taking a look in Fabric just to see my setup here. My sample data is in a Lakehouse. I'm then using a SQL endpoint to query that, and I'm going to be building my transformations into a Fabric warehouse in this particular example. And I'll just show my overall setup here. So that Lakehouse, querying it with an endpoint for the source data, and then this demo warehouse is where I'm going to be building those transformations. But back to DBT platform, let's take a look at what it's like to develop in DBT. If I go to the catalog, I can see that there are a number of different DBT projects running here. Some on Fabric, some on Databricks, some on Snowflake, and so on. But in this case, we're interested in Fabric. So let's go ahead and open up that Fabric project. And this is your bird's eye view of all of the development that's happening in your analytics on Fabric. I'm going to go and look at the lineage of this DBT project so we can understand it from end to end. On the left here, we've got that Lakehouse data. That's the source, raw untransformed data that we're going to be working with, that data set that we just saw in Fabric. And then moving across to the right, we've got these blue models, which are kind of DBT's units of transformation that we're using to build up the business logic that we need. I'll click across here to the main fact model that we're building, a sales by location, and then downstream, you can see that we've also got an exposure, DBT's term for a downstream dashboard or other use case. And we've even got another DBT project that is downstream of this one in a kind of data mesh setup whereby different domain teams can collaborate in governed, scalable ways. But let's focus a little bit on this fact model as well. I can hover over and see this data health tile that's giving me some information about how safe this model is to use. I can see that might be some stale upstream data and that we haven't built any tests yet, but the model has been built recently and there's some other positive signs in the data quality metadata. I can also see a description of the model. Optionally, I can assign an owner and see some other useful context about that model. Let's go ahead and view that in more detail. And what I'm going to do is choose one mode of development. We can see that there are a few different approaches in DBT. We can go ahead and analyze that data. We could edit the model in a visual way, which is our canvas tool. But here I'm going to choose a code-based way of developing, which is DBT Studio. And there we can see the underlying SQL of this particular model. And I can see the lineage again below there. Now, let's say I actually want to add some tests because I could tell from my lineage that there weren't any tests. DBT has inbuilt Copilot functionality to support your development. I'm going to click here and say generate generic tests. And hit go. And the Copilot is going to explain as it goes how it's parsing the DBT project and figure out what appropriate data quality tests would be for this model. So Copilot is going to go ahead and suggest some tests for me. For example, we want to make sure the calendar year is not null. Those kinds of tests come out the box with DBT2, so you don't have to write complex SQL just to check the data quality. I made some changes in this project, so I'm going to quickly go ahead and commit and sync those changes. So we've done some development with Copilot, and then we're going to make sure that those changes go through a standardized version control process, in this case on GitHub, before they get deployed to production. So I'll create a pull request. I'll skip my description for now. And what's great is when I go back to DBT platform, that version control process that I kicked off is triggering my CI process. So Jobs is both the place to run those DBT transformations on schedule, but it also offers functionality for safety checks after you have done some development in the DBT project, maybe with Copilot, maybe not, and are needing to confirm the integrity of the code changes and the resulting impact on data. So when I opened that pull request, it automatically opened this pull request here. And it looks like it went well. So we got a warning, but we didn't get an error. So now that that pull request has been gone through the CI process, we can go ahead and get it merged and deployed. DBT will also help with that process. And this is kind of a sample of what that development workflow would look like on Fabric. For teams building on Fabric, DBT platform provides that structured development layer that helps to efficiently turn raw data into trusted, reusable business assets and models. At the same time, DBT fits into what we call an open data infrastructure approach. So the same DBT development patterns can work across platforms like Fabric, Snowflake, Databricks, and more. That gives organizations flexibility while still maintaining consistent transformation logic, governance, and team workflows.
I hope that was useful to see a quick demo of DBT platform working directly with Fabric. Let's just move on to talk a little bit about the future before I hand this over. There are a lot of exciting things coming from the Microsoft and DBT Labs partnership this year. We will keep you posted on all of those. Most notably, our new DBT Fusion engine will be available in Fabric, bringing with it a host of developer experience and performance benefits. So lots more on that to come. Please stay tuned. Next, though, I am going to hand it over to Abhishek to talk about DBT Jobs in Fabric and what's new there. Over to you.
Thank you, Nina. Welcome back, everyone. Let's now talk about what you saw right now. Nina showed you, how you can get started with DBT on the DBT platform, how you can leverage Fabric along with DBT platform. Now we'll kind of switch into if you're using Microsoft Fabric and if your data, and if your other processes are within Microsoft Fabric, for example, the ingestion, orchestration, you're using multiple options within Fabric. And if you want a solution for orchestrating DBT within Fabric, we do have an option with DBT Jobs. And of course, we have, Nina has talked about the partnership with Microsoft, where we're bringing DBT Fusion as well, the runtime into Microsoft Fabric. With this, let's get started. For folks who haven't tried or know about DBT Jobs in Microsoft Fabric. So basically, what DBT Jobs in Fabric allows you, you can build, test, run DBT Jobs directly in the Fabric experience. You don't need any local setup. You don't need DBT core setup. No CLI, no infrastructure to manage, and everything runs serverlessly, fully managed runtime, where teams can focus on writing transformations instead of maintaining environments. Now, DBT Job also plugs into Fabric's orchestration layer so that they work seamlessly with things like copy job, pipelines, warehouses as part of the end-to-end flow. Because this is Fabric native, security is kind of built in. DBT Jobs respect the Entra ID. You have a common role-based access control, the SQL security, like RLS and CLS applies, and you use the Entra auth in terms of authenticating to the warehouses. So if you're doing analytics engineering, it honors your credentials and uses that Microsoft credentials downstream as well. And the goal is simple: make DBT enterprise ready again, fully integrated. And focus, of course, is on Microsoft Fabric warehouses and lakehouses here, and make you operate at scale within Fabric. And that's kind of what we announced with DBT Jobs in Fabric. This is back in Ignite, which is November 2025, when we announced the public preview. Now, lot of things have changed, and a lot of good things that we have added based on the feedback that we have received from you and other customers. And so we'll cover that as well. But before we jump there, let's talk about what is DBT Job, and let's get into a quick demo to see how people can use DBT Job. So I'm going to roll this over.
Let's start in a Fabric workspace. I choose New DBT Job. I can start from samples or import an existing project. No local setup required. For this demo, I'll pick the Jaffa Shop sample DBT project to keep things familiar. For the profile target, I'll select a profile and create a new warehouse to run against, then create a schema we'll use for the project. For the C data, by selecting the C data option, I can add static data files in my project as tables to my data warehouse, which provides staging data. This project imports in seconds, all inside Fabric. The seeding job starts and finishes within seconds. The sample ships with CSVs that land raw data into the warehouse schema. The seed just finished. And because we're in Fabric, identity and permissions flow through. Enter ID, workspace roles, and SQL level RLS, CLS, OLS policies are honored automatically when these tables are accessed elsewhere. Next, I'll keep the default DBT command on as run as build. That run models, tests, and snapshots in one go. Let's go ahead and run it. The run completes successfully. I'll go ahead and open the compiled SQL to verify what will be executed in the warehouse. Then I'll switch to Lineage. Raw orders, payments, customers, then I see staging models, and then final customers and order models, all green. Now let's explore the data warehouse view to check both the seeded data and the generated models. This is the end-to-end DBT loop. We author, then run, then test, then document without leaving Fabric. It's the fastest path from SQL to trusted models. Because DBT is native, operationalization is in one click. I'll create schedule, say nightly and hourly catch-ups, and wire alerts to our team channel. From run history, you get logs, artifacts, and test outcomes, And in Fabric monitoring, DBT jobs sit alongside pipelines and warehouses, so ops has one place to watch everything.
That was a quick demo on how to get started with DBT jobs in Microsoft Fabric. And you saw all the key features that we offered and we started with. Now, since then, of course, there's a lot of new features based on the feedback that has come in. And I would kind of want to talk about those features, which you can use today. And we have added that in the recent last 1 month, starting with GitHub support. You'll be able to run DBT jobs directly from the DBT code that sits in your GitHub repo. You don't need to copy or sync the code with the Fabric workspace Git. Fabric will execute straight from your source control where your codes are. And so your developers keep working the way they already do. They can use the VS Code or the existing development environments that they have and continue to push the code to DBT jobs in Microsoft Fabric. Second, public packages. We are enabling full DBT community package ecosystem. This means that your teams can accelerate development by pulling battle-tested packages from the community rather than reinventing common transformation logic across the DBT projects. Third is the enterprise scale logging. This is a big one because when we started with DBT Job, we capped the DBT output logs at around 1 MB, which was painful for large runs. When you're doing an operational run, refreshing the full project, it might cross that 1 MB size limit. And that's why we are fixing this. So now we are streaming logs directly to OneLake with no size limits. So you can get complete observability no matter how large or how long the job is. And that gives you a more enterprise-ready solution in terms of operationalizing large DBT jobs. Fourth is basically the pipeline DBT activity support, which is, released that feature yesterday. And that's about, you can orchestrate DBT jobs as native parameterized step inside the Fabric data pipelines. If you're building a metadata-driven pipeline, and if you want to do a specific model refresh because you're loading the data specific, which relates to a specific model, you can chain these two processes together, create a Uber pipeline, and start parameterizing things downstream. And this also means that DBT becomes the first-class citizen in your end-to-end orchestration, sitting alongside copy activities, notebooks, data flows, and all the different orchestration activities that we have in pipelines. And finally, REST API support. Full CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete, and list operations on the DBT job via the REST API. This unlocks automation, CI/CD integration, and programmatic management for your platform teams. Taken together, this makes Fabric a great place to run DBT at enterprise scale, bringing all the developer experiences your teams love together with the governance, scale, and orchestration Fabric provides. So that's a DBT job for you. Now, with this, let's roll on into our next demo, which is all the latest and the greatest updates that you saw in the slide. Let's go through a quick demo as well. So I'm going to roll this.
DBT jobs in Microsoft Fabric simplify operationalizing DBT at scale. Fabric provides a fully managed native way to run, schedule, monitor, and govern DBT projects. You can bring existing DBT projects directly from GitHub into Fabric with no code changes. Teams can reuse their existing repositories, stay aligned with CI/CD practices, and start running DBT jobs in Fabric in minutes instead of weeks. We now support public DBT packages, allowing teams to use well-known community packages like DBT Udin servants for generating surrogate keys, performing data quality checks, or reusing macros across hundreds of models, all with the familiar package definitions they already depend on. DBT Job Execution logs are now stored in OneLake, removing the previous 1 MB job output limitation. This makes DBT jobs far more reliable and scalable, especially for large projects, while enabling full fidelity troubleshooting, auditing, and long-term observability using Fabric native analytics. DBT jobs are now a first-class activity in Fabric pipelines. This enables rich orchestration where ingestion, transformation, and downstream analytics all run in a single pipeline. You can parameterize DBT job properties directly from the pipeline, making it easy to build metadata-driven dynamic data workflows. Everything you can do in the UI, triggering runs, monitoring execution, and managing jobs, is also available through REST APIs. Together, these enhancements make DBT jobs in Microsoft Fabric easy to onboard, powerful to operate, and ready for production scale analytics, from Git and public packages to enterprise logging, orchestration, and automation.
So you saw all the latest and the greatest features and a quick demo of those. With this, let's move on to the roadmap slides. We certainly want to talk about roadmap as well. And let's start with, of course, the features that you saw into the demos, which was basically part of the Q1 CY 2026. Some of them trickled into Q2, which is the month of April as well, like the DBT job pipeline activity, to be specific. And then we have the REST APIs for DBT job. These two things came in early in April. And then we have the Fabric adapters, new adapters coming in into supported by the DBT job as well. Lakehouse is one of the things. Right now we support Warehouse. Lakehouse is coming soon. And then the Fabric SQL adapter as well. These are all in the line coming this month or the next month within the Q2 calendar year 2026. And then easily creating DBT jobs using existing copy job mappings. This is an important feature where we feel if you're doing the extract, load, and transformation, you don't have to recreate models in the downstream process. So once you have, and customers who have invested in copy job and they are doing the E and L using a copy job, will give you a very simple way of reusing the same mappings and generating boilerplate templates in DBT so that you can simply start writing your transformations in DBT jobs without having to configure your projects. So you will get a pre-configured projects with all the understanding about the models that has been used in the copy job, in the destination, and this feature will be available for the supported adapters that DBT job supports. We are also constantly improving the templating, the Ginger templating support that we have. We recently improved some experiences in the UI, and so we'll continue to work on those improvements. Now, from enterprise operationalization perspective, it is very important to make the DBT job, the operationalized runs, run in as an identity or a service identity rather than a user identity. And this is because people do not want to operationalize the most critical workloads using a user dependencies, because users can go on vacations and your jobs can start to fail. And so you want this dependency to be either a service identity or a shared identity that can be used across users. And so supporting the workspace identity is a critical feature that we're working on. Of course, the workspace identity also implies that we'll support service principals. So service principals and workspace identities, if you don't know, this is kind of the managed identity that Microsoft manages, unlike service principals, where you have to create an Entra application and manage the secrets or the certificates of that. In case of workspace identity, it's equivalent to system sign managed identity in Azure. So you don't have to manage anything. It's a managed application that Microsoft has, and you can use those references directly in your connections when you're connecting to Fabric data sources. So it makes the experience much more fluent. At the same time, does not have a user identity or dependency. And then, as you saw Nina presenting about the partnership, DBT Fusion remains one of the most critical capabilities that we believe, along with DBT Jobs, DBT Labs, that we should be supporting. And this is something that we'll be starting the private preview quickly within the Q2, and we'll of course keep you notified. Through public channels when we get to that state on the Fusion support. And then in Q3, there's a bunch of features. Top ones I want to call out is the versioning support, because we are introducing Fusion. At still some point in time, there'll be DBT core support. And there is versioning within core and Fusion as well. And so we want to give people flexibility, because we've heard feedback on certain version support as an option to users to switch between when you're moving from core to Fusion. And then we have CI/CD improvements using Fabric native experiences. For example, the workspace variables, where you can actually switch the warehouses and lakehouses when you're moving from dev to test to prod. And there are constructs within Fabric workspaces as workspace variables, and you can use those workspace variables to kind of switch or rewire the warehouses across environments. And then you have support for DBT private packages. Again, very important capabilities where many customers have their own private packages and invested on that, and they would want to support that as well here. So these are quick flash of the roadmap on the DBT job. And of course, we keep hearing for feedback, and we'll share an email alias later on as well for where you can send us your feedback during the session, towards the end of the session. And we always keep looking at that email DL for any feedback that you have. So please provide your feedback through that email alias. But let's also cover the DBT Fabric adapter. That's important as well. Fabric Warehouse, and this is the current state of things. We do have a Fabric Warehouse adapter, which is available today. Our Fabric Warehouse DBT Core adapter powers the SQL-first analytics engineering on enterprise-grade Fabric warehouses. This is the foundation customers are already using in production. So that's the Fabric Data Warehouse adapter. And then second is a Fabric Lakehouse adapter coming soon. This is in preview right now, coming soon to GA. The Fabric Lakehouse adapter lets you run DBT transformations directly on Lakehouse tables in one lake. Teams get a unified DBT experience across both warehouse and Lakehouse adapters, and that's what we want to achieve, in the upcoming quarters. Now, both adapters are built Fabric native. They respect one lake storage abstraction, the separation of compute and storage, and enterprise governance and security. So DBT behaves like a first-class Fabric workload when you're using DBT within Microsoft Fabric or from within the DBT platform. And then third, DBT Fusion support expected in, again, Q2 CY 2026. We are actively aligning the warehouse and the Lakehouse adapters with the DBT Fusion, so customers can participate fully in Fusion-powered DBT jobs, the execution of it, the metadata, the observability, all of them in sync. And this is an important work that both DBT Labs and Microsoft is doing, just to make sure that we have the DBT Fusion support for our adapters. And that's the thing, that's when we'll start releasing the DBT Fusion support within DBT Jobs as well. So once we have the adapters ready. And finally, a zero rework path to Fusion. Customers investing in DBT on Fabric today have a seamless path forward when Fusion becomes available. There is no rework and no disruption to your existing Fabric analytics platform. Taken together, our adapter strategies about depth, not just availability, making both Fabric the best place to run DBT at enterprise scale, from warehouse to Lakehouse. Today, let's move on. So that was our adapter strategy. Now, interesting things. There's a lot of webinars that's going to follow up, and one of them is continuing the journey with DBT Labs. This is an upcoming webinar hosted by Nina and team. Nina, you want to quickly fill in here?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to take things a step further and really go into the weeds of step-by-step building with DBT and Fabric. I noticed that there isn't a date on the slide. You'll see it when you scan the QR code, but it is the 24th and 25th of June, depending on where in the world you are. We've got global friendly sessions for this. So do come and join us for some more kind of practical tips and a step-by-step guide here.
That's awesome. It's awesome to see, how DBT Labs and Microsoft is coming together and doing webinars in partnerships and showcasing all the greatness of DBT across. So please do join in this webinar. My bad, didn't insert the timeline, but Nina did mention it. You can scan the QR, or you can, register through the link, AKMS link. Very simple, DBT fabric webinar. That's where you can register right now, and hope to see you there as well. Now, with this, we are coming towards the end of the webinar. We'll continue to monitor the comments as well, but we do have a few surveys that we would want you to fill in, and these are a few questions we would want to understand from you on your DBT usage. What are your typical use cases for DBT? And this is basically a form, so you can quickly scan in. Once you scan, you will see Microsoft Forms page. It's unauthenticated. You don't have to give any information over there, personal information over there. You can just take these questions. There are 3 questions there. One, we would want to understand typical use cases and the challenges that you face. And then we have a couple of more questions followed through this on the same form. So you just have to scan it once. This particular QR on the screen, it'll lead to 3 questions. The second question is about the challenger, which is preventing you from using DBT Jobs in Microsoft Fabric, so that we can go and fix those challenges and make DBT Job ready for you, so that you can use that in production. These are very simple questions, so I would highly recommend going into this link, choosing, it's like an MC, multiple choice options, so it's very easy to quickly finish these. And the third one is, which of these DBT job capabilities would your organization find most valuable? So we would want to understand what are the key enterprise blockers that your organization wants, so that we can unblock those as well. So these 3 questions will help us understand your scenarios as well as the key blockers that you are facing, so that both Nina and us, Microsoft, on the DBT job team, can help improve the DBT experiences.
Abhishek, there are 3 questions on the comments. Maybe meanwhile we can take those up. I can read out those questions for you.
Absolutely.
First
Thank you, Brian.
question is about DBT Fusion being available for GA, the timelines for it.
I think, Nina, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of different components to it, right? Fusion, the engine itself, will GA very shortly. I believe that's early May. In addition, when we talk about GA, we need to think about the individual Fusion adapters as well. So we don't have a date in the calendar, we can say, for GA for Fusion Fabric Warehouse and Lakehouse. That's going to depend on the customer beta program that is kicking off, based on what we learned from that program. But that's hitting private preview now. And Fusion as a generic engine, GA in May. And if you start new projects in DBT platform today on certain adapters, the default will be Fusion. So you can go ahead and already try that out.
Thank you, Nina. And the second question is about, we did talk about GitHub being available on the roadmap. The second question is about the projects hosted on Azure DevOps repository.
That's an awesome question. Yes, right now, why we started with GitHub was, of course, this is just the first thing. We still have on the roadmap, which I didn't put on the roadmap slide, but it's understood because we started on a journey where you can bring your own code through your code repo. And in all the cases where we support GitHub, we also support Azure DevOps, right? So we will certainly add support for Azure DevOps. We are still, trying to get that in within the Q2, which is in the next 1 to 2 months, and that'll allow you to keep DevOps as the place where you can store the code and reference that code directly from the workspace. But I do want to call out that you do have a very good DevOps support with the Fabric workspaces, right? So you can use a Fabric workspace Git with Azure DevOps, and you can start with importing the project for once. It still does split your code repo because you're now using the workspace Git where you are storing the code rather than your existing Azure DevOps, but both of them can be Azure DevOps, just different projects within Azure DevOps, right? So you still have that option today, but if you don't want to use that option, if you want to keep your code separate from the workspace Git and do the CI/CD independently without all the workspace items together. In that case, we will soon be adding the support for Azure DevOps as well, and we do understand the need for that. So that's going to come up shortly in the next 1 to 2 months.
Thank you, Abhishek. There's one other question about, is column level lineage on the roadmap, will it be included with the release of Fusion?
I think it depends where, right? I can answer it from the DBT side, and then there might be kind of comment around DBT Job. But on the DBT side, column level lineage is supported both in DBT Core and also in the Fusion engine. Now, DBT Platform gives you the most interactive experience with that. Click through the lineage to see how that particular column was transformed and so on, if you like to use a kind of UI experience. I'll also call out that you get column level lineage in the VS Code extension using with DBT Fusion as well. So yeah, we'll certainly continue to support that. But Abhishek, I don't know if there is anything additional to add from the Fabric side.
No, in the Fabric side, DBT Job, we do have it on the roadmap as well on supporting the column level lineage. It's not on the list because we don't have a definitive timeline, but it's certainly on one of our backlogs to support that. And we'll continue to monitor this feedback on how critical that is. But as Nina said, you have the ways of finding the column level lineage in DBT platform with the support with VS Code plugins. And we'll continue to get this feedback and get the things prioritized within DBT Job based on your feedback.
Awesome.
Thank you, Abhishek. Any other questions? Feel free to drop your questions here on the chat.
And in the meantime, feel free to scan the QR and help us fill in with the survey. It's very, very important for us to get your feedback as well. And so please feel free to fill in the survey. If you have any questions during the meantime, feel free to put it on the chat and we'll be more than happy to take those questions.
Yeah, one other question, Abhishek. So for ADO, we would combine the workspace repo with the DBT project repo.
So these are great question, Nick, and for sure this kind of leads to confusion because people have two different repos. But I do want to make it clear that there are two different patterns. The patterns for CI/CD within Fabric basically means that you have a Git repo and you bind it to a workspace and you start adding artifacts within the workspace, and all of those share the same Git. You can decide on the folder structure if you want, but pretty much it's part of the same, the DevOps project in Azure DevOps. Now, with the workspace repo, if we are talking about this capability, this is a slightly different capability. In this capability, we don't store the code in the workspace Git. We only store a reference, and the reference is basically a Git reference, right? Today, it's GitHub reference. In future, it will also support, DevOps, Azure DevOps reference, right? What this means is that in your workspace Git, we do not store the code for the DBT job. It's just a reference or a pointer to another code repo. And this gives you more flexibility in terms of how you want to do CI/CD. For example, if you're using DBT platforms and Fabric DBT job together, and you want the flexibility of having a reusable repo, that is very, very helpful. This is where you would use that, right? And you would combine both of them together. But if you're doing a greenfield project and if you're getting started with DBT job, you can put everything inside the workspace repo itself. That removes the complications of two different repos, managing two different repos, but it also takes away the control, right? On how you do CI/CD. You fall into the bucket of the Fabric workspace based CI/CD, which is great, and it works for most of the customers. But if you do need the capabilities, you can have two different repos. So which means you are technically combining the workspace repo with the DBT project repo, but it's only a pointer to the DBT project repo. So you can use that with ADO once we ship the support for ADO. Today, what exists today as an offering is ADO support for workspace Git, right? That's already supported today. And you can do a code repo as GitHub, but today what you cannot do is the code repo, DBT Job code repo as Azure DevOps, and that's on our roadmap. So then you can have both combinations with ADO itself. Today you can have a combination between ADO as workspace Git and GitHub as your DBT Job code repo.
Thank you, Abhishek. There's one other question on when will DBT Job in Fabric be for GA? When will it be out?
That's an awesome question. So we certainly we are targeting September at FabCon as the timeline for GA of DBT Job. And we also hope that we will have DBT Fusion support by then. So it'll GA along with the DBT Fusion support. And at that point in time, when DBT Fusion is already generally available with adapters, we will make sure that it defaults to DBT Fusion as well, and you get best of the performance and all the offerings that DBT Fusion has to offer. And with that in mind, September is our current GA for DBT Job. We hope to align all these things together. And then give you DBT Job as a general available feature by September 2026.
Thank you, Abhishek. Any other questions? Yeah, we do have another question. If we develop now using the current DBT implementation in Fabric, what is involved in migrating that to the DBT Fusion Fabric implementation when that is released?
That's an awesome question. So I'll see if Nina, you want to say in general, without DBT Job, how does the migration, or I don't know if you want to call it migration, but upgrade looks like, and then I'll cover the DBT Job aspect.
Yeah, totally. So that's a good point, actually. The word migration sounds maybe scary, and we typically find it's not really that. It's more of just an upgrade process, especially like if you've changed DBT versions before in core, then it feels like a little bit more similar to that. We have some guides that we published at DBT. If you're working in DBT platform, there's a kind of click-through automated process that shows you step by step. If you're working elsewhere, then there's like things like agent skills that can also help you with that process. But what we aim for as well, is what important to call out with Fusion, is like behavioral parity. So really the goal is the authoring layer needs to stay as similar as possible. So that should minimize the number of changes that you need to make across your code base. Where there are changes you need to make, there are different guides based on where specifically you're developing.
Yeah, and that extends to DBT Job and Microsoft Fabric as well, right? That's why you saw in the roadmap, we talked about a capability called versioning support, which gives you the capability of, choosing a higher version of the project, right? Where you want to upgrade things to. So it's going to, I hope it doesn't look any scary, but the idea is to make it super simple, as if you're doing an upgrade on the version, and things should just work fine as well. And we do understand you need debugging and troubleshooting as well, because sometimes things can break with the wrong configurations. So you will have all those experiences built in there, but it's not going to be a mammoth process, I hope so. And you will simply be able to target Fusion with the existing investments that you're doing. And I think I did cover that in terms of the adapter support that we are building as well. It's built in a way that you won't have to rewrite your SQL code and so on when you're moving on to Fusion. So all those things we do have at back of our mind as well, just to make things easier for you when you switch to Fusion.
Absolutely. And something just sparked a thought as you were speaking as well, Abhishek. I think one thing that is always available is DBT Debug, which is a package that makes it super simple to work through those changes. And if I'm thinking about what the motivation for this question might have been, I'd say if you're thinking about it, don't hold back with your development. Go ahead and build in DBT Core. That process should be fairly straightforward, and we'll make it as smooth as possible for you.
One other question from the chat. Can you summarize the difference between Fabric Warehouse connected versus upcoming Fabric One Lake connector?
Yeah, good question. So I probably am not the SME to break down the two adapters. I have a colleague who can do that probably much better, but I'm not sure, Nina, you have much input. But what feedback I do have from Pradeep, who is our SME on this, is both are going to look alike by the time the Lakehouse adapter, or we also call it as termed here as One Lake connector, right? We term that as the Fabric Lakehouse adapter as well. Both will be like to like in terms of features and capabilities, and that's a goal. That's the reason why the Lakehouse adapter is not GA yet. There are differences there, but I think it's going to catch up by the time GA. That's the information I have, and I'll leave you there. And then Nina, if you have more information you want to add on to that.
Yeah, that's totally right. I can add just a little bit more. So obviously the warehouse adapter is ultimately going to compile down to T-SQL, and it's going to work with that warehouse compute. The authoring layer in DBT is still going to be the same. That's the goal of DBT adapters in general. We make that abstraction. But as you can imagine, then with the Lakehouse adapter, also it can be referred to as, I think in the GitHub repo, it's DBT Fabric Spark. So you can compile code down to Spark with it. So it's kind of giving you the flexibility to write DBT code, whichever engine in Fabric, whichever language you ultimately want to be writing the code in. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah. Thanks, Nina. And we still have 8 more minutes in this session, so we'll still waiting for more questions to come in, trickle in. But it was quite insightful for me as well to learn on the DBT platform and the integrations that we talked about, with Fabric, how things are much easier for customers using DBT and the options they have across DBT platform, and then in DBT Job. Of course, DBT platform giving you rich offering capabilities, and then DBT Job giving you some native functionalities within Fabric ecosystem with Warehouse and Lakehouse. So you saw all of those features, and I hope that was insightful, and that was insightful for me too, from learning from Nina and the DBT Labs team as well. And so, yeah, if we don't have any further questions, we can probably call it a day. But it was a pleasure having all of you here with all the great questions that you had. And we look forward to seeing you in more webinars and joint webinars that DBT Labs and Microsoft will be doing together. And I hope you saw the registration link. If not, it'll be pasted down in the YouTube video as well, so you can refer to that later and register. And that's all from me. So, Nina.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
you for having me.
Put the alias in the chat, or do we have a separate platform?
That's a great one. So I actually, before I hand it over to Nina for the closure, this is the slide which is missing. So this is our alias, dbtjob@microsoft.com. This is basically on the Microsoft side, the DBT Job side, where you can write if you have any questions or if you have any feedback. You can, just shoot an email onto this. Abhinyami and our team are monitoring this alias. So we'll get back to you shortly. Any specific questions around DBT Job or DBT on Microsoft Fabric, this is the place. We'll loop in Nina if we need any assistance on the DBT Lab side as well. So just feel free to add your questions or feedback onto this alias. And it's very easy to remember. Remember this, dbtjob@microsoft.com. And we look forward to your feedback through this email distribution group as well. And back to you, Nina.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to you and the rest of the Microsoft team for having me here today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everybody for attending, and really looking forward to seeing what we can build together. Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.